have finally secured the endorsement of President Obama. We heard the White House earlier say that the president had said very early on in the process that he wouldn't put his thumb on the scale. He now has. The announcement came in a video that was posted to her website less than 2 hours after President Obama met with Bernie Sanders. Less good news for Hillary Clinton that Bernie Sanders is refusing to pull out of the race. He said that he would carry on fighting the fight. He's refusing, though, to clear the way. He remains very much a thorn in her side, as do his 10 million voters. In terms of Bernie Sanders, he was himself very silent, noticeably silent on President Obama's endorsement of Hillary Clinton. But the White House says that that endorsement came to him as no surprise, and he's determined to fight on.
Now, Nina, staying with Bernie Sanders, is he perhaps doing this because he somehow expects his party, or he's hoping for the party to incorporate his policy ideas into their broader agenda?
It's a very good question, and it's a question that's very much on the lips of political commentators here in Washington, D.C. That question is, how realistic is it that Bernie Sanders is holding on in a bid to transform the core democratic values of his party? He spoke along those lines immediately after his meeting with President Obama. He said that he was going to carry on the fight for issues that he holds dear, including justice for the poor, student debt, financial reform. And he said that America would not tolerate the values of Donald Trump, values that Americans do not share. And he said that he very much wanted to meet Hillary Clinton to find a way of working together to combat and defeat Donald Trump. What he didn't say, though, was that he wanted to help Hillary defeat Donald Trump, which is what I think her campaign aides were very much hoping to hear.
Now, let's look at the DC vote. Any hope for Sanders there?
Well, Bernie Sanders talked about the DC primary, which, as you know, is being held next Tuesday, June the 14th. He said that he phrased it in a very interesting way. He said that he would carry on in the race at least past the primary here in DC, although the question over whether or not he'll drop out of the race is purely speculation. But he did identify it as a bit of a marker, an event on the horizon. He spoke also directly to DC residents, and he said that he would campaign for one of their long-standing issues, which was to demand statehood for the District of Columbia, which, as you may know, is not a state in its own right. But I think in terms of the broader scheme of things, the bird's eye view in terms of this U.S. election, the DC vote itself is largely irrelevant.
Now, Nina, Sanders had an early afternoon meeting planned with Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid, who is sought to play the role of peace broker at the end of this contentious nominating contest between Sanders and Clinton. What came out of that meeting?
Well, Harry Reid spoke very warmly of that meeting. He said that he had a very nice meeting with Bernie Sanders. He said that he's invited him to address his caucus here in D.C. On Tuesday. His exact words were, I'm in a good place with Bernie, and I feel Bernie is in a good place in my caucus. But the fact remains that Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and Bernie Sanders' emergence has really split the party. While Hillary Clinton enjoys the majority of the party's support, Bernie's success has really exposed massive ideological issues and fights over trade, over globalization, over financial reform, and it may take some time for that rift to be healed.
Now, Nina, Sanders remains convinced that the gains he's made and the movements that he has led should not be quickly discarded in the name of the party unity. How are Democrats receiving this? Are they supportive or just seeing him as being difficult?
Well, I think taking a step back for a minute, Bernie Sanders' success and his appeal, especially to youth voters, has come very much as a surprise. It wasn't very long ago that the idea of a hard left fringe Democratic candidate, the idea of them winning the core center of the party and its voters across America seemed almost ridiculous. There was a moment when Elizabeth Warren, who's again very much on the hard left of the party, had presidential aspirations herself, and the idea that she might be able to win over the majority in the center of the Democratic Party was dismissed out of hand, and we've seen that Bernie Sanders has himself proven that theory wrong. Now, his critics would say it's time to step aside, it's time to concede defeat, admit that you're not going to be the party nominee, and head towards the convention, upholding the issues that you said that you'll fight for, all of those social justice issues that young people feel very strongly about, and that's the way to approach the convention. Of course, we've seen no hint that he's about to drop out of the race, but his critics say that that would be the right thing to do.
Now, speaking of the convention, how are preparations for it unfolding?
Well, I think the tone of the US election has very much changed. There was a point at which we thought the Democratic convention in July would be a walk in the park, that Hillary Clinton would emerge as the front runner, as the party's nominee, with no question. But Bernie Sanders' success, that strong wave of support of 10 million voters behind him, proves that the convention could actually be a lot more contested, especially if he goes past the DC primary and decides to stay in the race. I think most political commentators would agree that we thought that the Republican convention would be the tough one, but in fact key establishment figures on the Republican side have rallied around Donald Trump, who has, it has to be said, he's had a bad week this week with very key and important establishment Republican figures like Paul Ryan stepping out and saying, even though he's endorsed him, accusing him of textbook racism. The key question for Hillary Clinton at the Democratic Convention is, can she win over Bernie Sanders supporters, many of whom are very angry, will be very angry still, and not willing to back her?
Nina, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for that update. That was our Washington correspondent, Nina Maria Potts, giving us the latest from that presidential race.